Hi, this is Alexander coming to you from Amsterdam. I am Senior Manager Team Services and Analytics over at PFF, and today I'm going to talk a bit about the work we have been doing in the realm of soccer/football. I'll start today with giving a bit of an intro of what PFF is and what we do. Then I'm going to talk a bit about our latest offering, which is a broadcast tracking data feed fully integrated with events due to our partnership with SportLogic. And then I'm going to go into two ways we can use the tracking data for analysis in football. First, I'm going to talk a bit about open ball receptions. And lastly, I'll talk a bit about identifying off-the-ball runs. Starting with the company overview of PFF, our vision is to build a smarter sports world. And how do we plan to do so? We plan to do so by having the best data out there combined with the best products that are easy to use for all decision makers within teams. PFF began operations in 2007. The company started out in the UK. It was founded by Neil Hornsby and was later brought to the States by Chris Collinsworth. And now the headquarters are based in Cincinnati, Ohio. Since the first NFL customer, the New York Giants in 2011, we have managed to become the number one in American football. We are now used from the film room to the boardroom by all the NFL teams and over 190 NCAA teams, including the 133 FBS programs. And besides that, we are doing a lot for consumers as well. We have a big following on social media, over 3.3 million followers. And we currently have over 70,000 paying digital subscribers as well to our products. And those products are, for instance, for fantasy football, there are a lot of people using our data to build their squad for fantasy football or otherwise make decisions in the betting industry. We've started on our soccer roadmap a little over 2 years ago, and our current focus is on utilizing our broadcast tracking that I'll talk about later a bit more, and delivering physical metrics in a platform to teams with metrics across teams, positions, and player dimensions. And basically we take away some of the first steps that will happen in recruiting when scouts are looking at a player. They look at the physical profile of a player on tape, but we help them get a deeper understanding by providing physical metrics. This helps teams to overcome the fact that coverage is hard to come by when it comes to optical tracking data. So a lot of leagues have a league deal for an optical tracking partnership, but there's not a lot of tracking data that's shared among leagues. So a Premier League team has access to Premier League data, but it doesn't see MLS data, while MLS teams have access to MLS data, but they don't see the Premier League data, and so on. We are also exploring full tracking opportunities. The two examples that I'll share later are examples of analysis on full tracking data, on full broadcast tracking data, and basically helping teams to get insights out of the XY coordinates for all players all the time, which leads to big data sets of over 1 million data points per game. On our roadmap for next year and beyond is to build our end-to-end solution. So we want to help teams save time and simplify their workflows by combining the event data, physical data, and tracking data into a platform that provides great data visualization tools and video for all to see. Our platform is going to be named PFF Ultimate, just like it is in football. We truly believe that data quality is of the utmost importance. Our focus is on delivering the highest quality and most granular data set in the industry. And we want to build trust. So we provide service to teams that is of the best standard. Basically, whenever a team has a question, no matter the hour, we make sure we answer the question in due course. Now let's get into the tracking data a little bit. We have partnered with the Canadian company SportLogic, which is an AI-powered sports analytics company. And basically what they do for us is they use our video and some basic event data to capture player locations for a given frames per second that's determined by the video. Usually it's around 30 frames per second. SportLogic is a FIFA licensed computer vision process. So basically the broadcast tracking data that SportLogic delivers is up to the standards that are set by FIFA. And working together with them, we can basically use either a broadcast video or a tactical video, so a wide angle camera footage can also be used to collect player locations at that given frames per second. Now, to go a little bit into how SportLogic does so, basically there are 3 steps involved. First, there's camera calibration. So as you know, when watching football, each stadium has a slightly different setup when it comes to where the broadcast camera is. So the system needs to identify the pitch and where the camera is first, by recognizing the pitch lines and so on. The next step is to identify which player is who, which is firstly done by kit numbers. So obviously the system knows how to read numbers and identify players that way, but there are multiple ways to identify players afterwards. So there's a facial recognition that's going on. We use the field position of a player to know roughly in what area the player will operate during normal play, but also other characteristics are used to identify players. The camera calibration combined with the player identification is then used to produce XY coordinates for all the players at the given frames per second. And there's a model that's predicting the off-screen movements of players. So we capture the 22 players on the pitch for each frame, even though the player is off-screen. I talked a little bit earlier about the problem of coverage when it comes to optical tracking data. Well, this system actually allows us to process hundreds of games at once, and we don't need chips, we don't need sensors, we don't need cameras in the stadium. We can do so on the broadcast footage alone. From this tracking data, we have built a physical metrics product that will help teams determine the physical profile of the players on their own team, in their league, or when they're recruiting from other leagues. Our physical metrics products allows teams to build physical profiles not only for players, but also on a team dimension within games or for a multitude of games. The example here, we see Colorado Rapids against the Galaxy in a single game, outrunning them at higher speeds. But we can break it down into very granular levels. We can look into what players on the Rapids ran a lot on these speeds. We can look into those players over a given time frame, maybe 5 games, maybe the entire season. It actually allows to build a physical profile that's very in-depth and allows to really get into what a team's looking for. So what makes this solution unique? Basically, it's the fact that our events are synced to the video before the tracking data is collected. So basically, the system works like this. A game is played, the video is uploaded to our DAT, our data acquisition tool. We then collect the event data for that game before we send both the video and those events to SportLogic to generate the tracking data. And this leads to an enriched tracking data set coming back from SportLogic to PFF. This takes away the need for clubs to synchronize event data to tracking data, which is always a bit of a hassle for teams to do, and it's something that we take away this way. Let's look at an example. We have a game between Chicago and Orlando. From the kickoff, we see a couple of passes. then a clearance before the ball goes out of play. Now looking at the coordinates that are produced by Sport Logic, combined with our events with the passes and the clearance at the end, leads to a data set that allows to build a clip like this. Now let's get into a couple of fun ways we can actually use this unique data set, starting off with open ball receptions. First, a couple of definitions. We define an open ball reception as receiving the ball with at least 5 meters of space around you as a receiver, and on the other hand, a tight ball reception is when you receive it with less than 5 meters of space around you. Looking at zone 14, zone 14 is the area located outside the opponent's penalty box. It's actually shown by previous research that it's a very important zone on the pitch, and more successful teams actually use this zone more frequently and efficiently than less successful teams, which implies that if you receive the ball a lot in space in zone 14, you create opportunities to be successful as a team. First, on the left side, we see an example of a open ball reception in zone 14 by Marseille in the game against Ajax in the UEFA Europa League this season. We can look at the video and we see Kondogbia heading the ball to Harit, and he has space around him when receiving the ball here in zone 14. And then on the other end, we have the same combination of passer and receiver. It's Kondogbia to Harit, but now the closest Ajax defender is much closer to the ball, which is defined for us as a tight ball reception. Again, we can look at the video over here. We see Kondogbia passing it to Harit, and immediately he's under pressure by 2 Ajax players. So this is a tight ball reception. Going back to the presentation, we can actually look on a team level how teams are creating opportunities to get into zone 14. So this graph shows on the x-axis the total ball receptions in zone 14 per game in the UEFA Europa League for each team, versus on the y-axis we see the percentage of those ball receptions in zone 14 being open ball receptions, so with at least 5 meters of space around the player receiving the ball. What we see here is differences between teams. Obviously, Liverpool creating a lot of ball receptions in zone 14, but they are around the average in terms of percentage of those being open ball receptions. We see a couple of teams standing out in terms of open ball receptions. Union from Belgium, TSC, we see Slavia Prague, and most notably Olympique Marseille, the example we just shown. They create a lot of ball receptions in zone 14, and a lot of those, a high percentage of those are also open ball receptions. We can also do it the other way around. So obviously you as a team, you want to get into zone 14 yourself, but you also want to prevent your opponent from getting into zone 14. So here on the y-axis, it's total ball receptions conceded in zone 14 per game. And notice that this y-axis is inversed because obviously conceding less total ball receptions is better than conceding more, versus the percentage of tight ball receptions of those. So again, we see Liverpool in terms of numbers, total numbers being great. They have the lowest ball receptions conceded in zone 14 per game. And we also see again Slavia Prague doing well when it comes to percentages. So they don't concede a lot of open ball receptions from the receptions they do concede in zone 14. Now, instead of looking at a team level, we can also go into a player level. So which players are actually receiving the ball a lot in zone 14. This one shows the total ball receptions, so it's a combination of the open ones and the tight ones, and we see my fellow Dutchman Martin de Roon having the most, together with Mikkel Rigaert of Hekken. And the reason to show this is actually it gives a little bit of insight already into different ways of getting into zone 14 for a team. So Martin de Roon, for instance, a central midfielder, is the one receiving it most for Atalanta, whereas Lukaku for AS Roma is a center forward, obviously being the one receiving it most over there. And for Liverpool, it's Joe Gomez, who's a defender. So there are different ways of getting into the zone, using different players on different positions. Switching to open ball receptions, we see again Martin de Roon being the highest with 16. And Joe Gomez again high up this ranking. So it's a good way to look at a team level. It's a good way to look at performance in zone 14 on a player level. And it provides deeper insights immediately off the get-go. One last example of how to use the tracking data is to identify off-the-ball runs. This is actually something where we combine our American football data with the soccer data that we have. And basically we use the routes that are labeled in NFL data to predict off-the-ball movement in soccer. So a little bit about routes in American football for those who are less familiar with the sport. Each snap, the quarterback gets the ball, and basically there is a predetermined set of routes that are ran by the potential receivers on the team, whether that's wide receivers or tight ends. They can all run different routes that are preset. PFF labels each route that is ran during each play, so that's a pretty big data set combined with NGS data, that's the tracking data for NFL, leads to a robust data set to do predictions on which type of route was actually ran. And by using the tracking data in soccer, we can actually use the model that we've built in American football and use it on the soccer data to predict off-the-ball movement. And this is something that's worthwhile because off-the-ball runs are not systematically labeled by anyone in the game of soccer right now. So a little bit about the model. We use a random forest model, and it's trained on more than 2,000 routes from 1 week alone of the 2021 NFL season. And we limit it to the first 3 seconds after the snap. So the snap is when the center throws the ball back to the quarterback, and we limit to the first 3 seconds to keep it applicable to the game of soccer, because events follow each other sometimes in more rapid fashion in the game of soccer. Our included variables in the models are the distance between the receiver and the passer, the angle between them, and the speed of the receiver. And first, the model is trained to predict NFL routes on NFL data again, and we get an overall accuracy, as shown in this classification report, of 0.73, which is pretty decent. And notice that we've limited the route types to routes that might be applicable to soccer more than others. So based on our experience in both sports, we've basically excluded routes that we don't see happening in soccer often. Now, what does this give us? Again, we see a couple of frames. Let's look at the video first. It's the game between Manchester United and Arsenal. We see Arsenal having the ball over here in the midfield. And the first pass that we will see is considered to be the snap. And the player who receives the ball after the snap is considered the quarterback. And we look at the movement of Saka during this play. So here we see the ball going to Jesus. And we see Saka making a run behind him. And he doesn't receive the ball, but we obviously see that he made an off-the-ball run here. So this is summarized by these 3 frames, but we actually use the 3 seconds that are within this soccer snap, as we call it. And we actually see that the model predicts this to be an H2 route. So going back to the route tree, we can look at the route here. It's an H2 route, which is a route that goes behind the quarterback, which when we look at such as run makes sense for us. So this model actually allows us not to do this just for this single frame. We can do this for entire games, entire seasons, and then identify which players are making a lot of off-the-ball runs, and actually also what type of runs are they making to make themselves available to receive the ball. So this is a very fun and useful way of using the tracking data and actually combining the fact that we have knowledge in both sports to come up with insights that can help teams identify players or teams that make certain types of off-the-ball movements. That was it for me today. Thank you for listening. As you can see here, my email address is alexander.schram@pff.com. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. We have a partnership with UFMG, so if you are a student at the university, please reach out to me or Hugo or Wagner and see if there's anything we can do in terms of delivering data for some type of research project or whatever. And if you are working for a team and are interested in what we do, obviously, feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Bom dia, pessoal. É um prazer enorme estar aqui com vocês. Só contextualizando um pouco dessa apresentação da PFF. A PFF é uma empresa de dados. O esporte principal de cobertura deles é o futebol americano. E eles são os fornecedores de dados que provêm dados para o nosso laboratório. Então, a partir de junho, aí, a gente está recebendo os dados de tracking, que são esses que pegam a posição de todo mundo. Já foi perguntado aqui mais cedo, né, sobre... o Pedro já mostrou como que ele usa o tracking para fazer algumas análises mais voltadas para a fisiologia. A gente já teve pergunta em seguida também perguntando como que seria possível, né, estender o trabalho do Gabriel e do João Lucas para achar esses padrões frequentes sem bola. Então, com os dados da PFF e mais ou menos na pegada do que o Alexander mostrou para a gente agora, a gente pretende desenvolver pesquisa aí nos próximos anos. E é um dado que, pelo fato dele, né, pegar todos os jogadores e oferecer muito mais contexto do que está acontecendo, a gente consegue criar e fazer análises muito mais ricas. E acho que ele também traz uma maior possibilidade de colaboração com pessoas de outras áreas. Então, falando de novo do Pedro, que já utiliza, mas não só para as coisas de fisiologia, né, e dados físicos, mas acho também de questões táticas. Ele traz uma profundidade e cobertura que não é possível com os dados de eventos. Então, a gente consegue investigar o jogo de maneira muito mais profunda. Então, espero que vocês tenham gostado. Mais para frente, a gente vai continuar abordando outros tópicos aí, mas é um dado muito completo, mas, ao mesmo tempo, também muito custoso, muito pesado. Então, por exemplo, a gente está recebendo os dados da PFF. Cada jogo aí é aproximadamente uns 800 mega, cada partida. Então, assim, os dados vêm com a posição de todos os jogadores numa frequência de 30 frames por segundo. Então, você imagina, assim, quanto a gente tem milhões de pontos de dados por jogo. Então, requer custos computacionais também maiores e que, para além das coisas de análise, tem toda uma questão de infraestrutura de dados que é necessária para conseguir extrair valor de fato desses dados de uma maneira escalável, que para um clube, para quem precisa tomar decisões rápidas e eficientes em cima desses dados, é muito importante.